Everyone, I'm Ahana.
And I'm Celine.
Welcome to another episode at the We
Are Podcast. So, this week is another exciting lineup of news updates. So why don't we get started with the Russia and Ukraine crisis?
So, Russia invaded Ukraine 2 weeks ago, maybe? Yeah.
2 weeks ago, yes.
2 weeks ago. And we've been talking about it ever since. It's been the biggest news of the year.
Definitely huge.
Of the past 2 years, maybe.
And again, if you want more in-depth discussion about it and kind of the beginning of it, how it happened, then check out our past update from 2 weeks ago, which was all about that. It was a 20-minute analysis on that, so that was
I think it was on, when did we upload? The 28th?
Yeah, because we did skip last week.
I think it was uploaded on the 28th of February, so check it out. And it goes in depth on the whole thing. But what we've decided is at the beginning of all of our news updates from now on, we're gonna have a section dedicated to Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, just updates on that, new things that have happened.
Yeah, because I think that's so important because it's happening in our world right now, and it's killing and affecting so many people.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so why don't you start us off?
All right, so let's start off, shall we? Okay, so Russia and Ukraine. Basically, Russia has not backed down at all, which, I mean, it's kind of expected and not expected at the same time, because, I mean, there was kind of a little bit of hope for a ceasefire, but not happening.
I don't know, I just feel if he was gonna do it, he was gonna go full out, and obviously he's going full out, and he's not gonna stop.
Yeah, and everyone's he's literally a psychopath. So, essentially what happened is Russian airstrikes have been constantly hitting, the capital, Kiev, I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry if I say it wrong. As well as the port city of Mariupol, which is an essential city because it's a port city, which means that it's near a seaport and it has a location for imports and exports. But also because they are targeting hospitals.
Yeah, hospitals with people who are on ventilators and sick and
specifically I think something that really hurt me is I saw a video of premature kids being moved to a airstrike basement because of the whole thing, and it hurts my heart.
Yeah, and I saw this this story of this pregnant woman who was in a hospital, and she had to she survived, but still, I mean, imagine that. That's
It's so sad. And then on top of all of that, they're the attacks are killing people. In fact, one of the hospitals, which is a maternity hospital, wounded 17 people, and Ukrainian officials are calling it a war crime, essentially, which it is. And Celine will actually talk about that in a bit. But essentially, because they're targeting hospitals, so many people are fearful. They're evacuating. There's also been shell attacks on cities. Shell attacks are smaller bombs, and they're just really terrible. But Zelensky, which is the president of Ukraine, actually said that above 35,000 civilians have used humanitarian measures to flee Ukraine.
There are a lot of refugees who have to get out of the country.
Oh, there's expected millions of people who are going to be internally displaced, which means that they're going to have to move away from their home in the country, and millions of people who are displaced outside, which means they have to go to asylum countries, which are essentially countries that take in refugees, and those are Poland, other European countries. So that's a big issue. Russia also accused Ukraine of having chemical weapons labs, which is not true, number one. Yeah. Because they have no evidence of it, and the White House representative Jen Psaki actually said it was preposterous and was an attempt for Russia to validate the invasion, which is
there's no validation there.
Yeah, literally you're killing innocent people. There's no validation for that. But the US, in hopes to sort of mediate or decrease the impact by Russia, is imposing more and more sanctions. Celine, what are sanctions again?
So, sanctions are punishments that countries can place on other countries for doing something that they really don't like, for example, invading Ukraine. So, it can be economic sanctions, like stopping trade or stopping imports and exports of certain goods, anything along those lines.
Exactly. So, as far as these sanctions go, so the U.S. has already, done several things, by, freezing banks in Russia, which means that, the Russia can't use those funds. But they also have recently, the Biden administration has taken an act to completely deny imports of oil and gas. And this is a big deal because while, a majority of Americans, I think it's, above 70%, think this is a good move, it has a direct impact at the gas like, what's it called?
Prices?
Refill, gas station?
Gas station, yeah.
So, because when, like, we're banning a country for, like, from bringing oil and gas into the U.S., like, that raises prices because there's more of a demand and less of a supply. Because we're cutting off an entire, like, place where we used to buy it. And it actually was, like, 8% of our gas and oil came from Russia, so that's, like, a pretty big chunk.
Yeah, it may not seem like a lot, but, like, when you take all of that away.
Definitely. And, like, because of all of this, the prices are over $4, which means some people are spending over $80 a gallon.
It's a lot.
Or, not a gallon, a tank, which is insane. But, and some people can't afford it. So, like, a lot of people are, like, really upset about that. And while a lot of people think this is a good move, I would like to, like, take a little minute to explain an economic standpoint of it. And honestly, a lot of people are thinking that it won't impact Russia as much as we think it will, because gas is fungible. And fungible is a really, like, weird concept, but it's essentially where it's mutually interchangeable, which means that, like, when we cut off, like, imports from Russia will just find another place that's gonna take the imports, right? And, like, it will be, like, a third-party supplier, essentially, for the U.S., like, indirectly. Because, think about it, if we cut off Russia directly, then Russia will sell their oil to another country, and we're probably gonna end up buying it from that other country.
Yeah, an example of that would be China, because China can be a supplier for Russia. Like, for
exactly. So, like, it's fungible, so it honestly wouldn't affect Russia as much as we think it would, but it's essentially, like, viewed as a good move because it, like, is such a statement, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing something. Maybe it's not going to stop the war, but we're at least doing something, you know? So.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
There's also sanctions imposed on vodka, seafood,
That's
and
kind of
other
funny.
goods.
Vodka.
And then, like, the last major thing that the U.S. is doing in the U.K. is they, like, sanctioned Russian businessmen, which are called oligarchs, and they've revoked the status of normal trade relations with the European Union and the G7 summit, which is, like, the group of 7 countries. And what this allows is, like, they can impose taxes on Russian imports, and they can also, like, prevent Russia from borrowing funds for entrepreneurial purposes from, like, the World Bank.
Yeah.
And last thing, sorry, I said last thing, but this is the actual last thing. So the U.S. House of Representatives has actually provided, like, a bill that they've, like, passed that the Senate was gonna, like, is expected to pass that would rush $13.6 billion in aid to Ukraine.
Wow. That's that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So, are we ready?
Next. More Russia.
So this is more about Russia, but a different realm of it, sort of. So the ICC is doing an investigation into Putin. So the ICC, oh my god, I can't speak. The ICC stands for the International Criminal Court, and it's basically like this huge court of, like, international countries that investigate and, like, can charge people for, like, huge large-scale crimes like genocide or crimes against humanity. We're talking about, like, the killing of innocent people. Like for like murdering one person, you wouldn't send that to the ICC because that's, like, a lower scale crime. Obviously it's still, like, a crime, but, like, this is, like, big, like, huge things, basically. And the ICC has the power, or, like, the jurisdiction, which is, like, basically the power to hear, like, a trial over a certain topic. So they have the jurisdiction over, like, crimes against humanity, crimes of aggression, war crimes, and genocides. Those are the 4 things they have jurisdiction over. And, you know, as we just talked about with the Russian-Ukraine thing, there have been a lot of, like, bombings, a lot of, like, innocent civilians have been killed, like, hospitals have been targeted, all this different stuff that, like, people are saying, yeah, these are war crimes, and they absolutely are. So the ICC is doing investigations into, like, really finding evidence to, like, be able to persecute Putin on the topic of war crimes. But the thing is, it's like with any trial, it's hard to gather that evidence, you know, because Putin can make the defense that, like, oh, it's my soldiers who did that, like, not me, even though he, like, made the order, right? Like, even though he decided to invade Ukraine, that is, like, a defense he could use. So it's going to be hard to gather the evidence. And on top of this, like, say they do find enough evidence to accuse him of war crimes, they would have to, like, actually get him to trial, because they run trials where, like, the person who's being, like, persecuted has to be there. They don't do it in absentia, which is basically where, like, the person's not there but you still run the trial. Like, Putin needs to be there, which would be hard because he would either have to be arrested, surrender himself, that would never happen, or the people of Russia would have to extradite him. So it's like, those things are very unlikely, like, of happening, right? Like, it's not, so it's like, even if they were to be able to gather enough evidence, it's not looking great in the form of, like, how are they even going to get him there? But
and the amount of, like, fraud that Putin has committed to stay in power, like, he's changed the laws so he could have longer terms. He's, like, essentially, like, there's no, like, real, like, you know, but we all know he's killed enemies off.
Yeah.
He's killed off
Yeah.
opposition. He's threatened people. Like, there's so many scandals happening with that. And so, like, he has too much power to the point where he would never, like, it's so hard for him to be captured or anything.
Yeah, it would just be really hard. But another thing is that there was also, like, Russia attacked, like, a nuclear power plant, which is seen as, like, a war crime, too. So there's also that. There's a lot of stuff. Like, you could go on and name, like, a long list, but I'm not going to because there's so many things. But, you know, hopefully they can gather the evidence, and, you know, I highly doubt he's gonna, like, turn himself in, but I guess we will see what happens with that. We'll keep you updated on that, so.
Psycho.
Definitely.
I feel so bad for the Russian people.
I know.
Too. Like, even more for the Ukrainian people, but the Russian people who are, like, hate that the war is happening and, like, are against it.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, people who are, like, opposing Putin will get killed. Like, if you openly oppose him, he could just, like, you know, because that's kind of his...
Especially if you become, like, a powerful figure. Like, there was a scandal with, like, this dude. I forget his name.
Wasn't it, like... I feel like it started with an A.
Alexander something.
Yeah, Alexander something.
No. I don't know. But this dude, he literally was, like, a big figure who opposed him, and he kind of, like, stuff happened. But
yeah,
essentially.
Yeah. So
yeah,
obviously it's kind of a hard situation for everyone, especially Ukraine. Obviously,
yeah, but
seeing what's happening there. But all right.
Yeah, and in our last update, we actually talked about ways that you yourself can help Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of donation centers. There are a lot of different things you can do. So please support as much as you can. And if you can't donate, that's understandable. But still, spread the word about it.
Yeah, and go check out our last news updates for ways to help Ukraine.
Yeah. All right.
So let's move on to another depressing news. Like, the world is kind of just falling to pieces, honestly.
It is.
But there's hope. I mean, we'll get to the hope part later, but as of right now, let's talk about an attack that happened in Pakistan. So, Pakistan. It's Pakistan. So, basically, Celine, explain to us a little bit about the two branches of the Muslim religion.
Yes. Okay. So the two branches of the Muslim religion are Sunni and Shiite. So, wait.
Yeah.
Yes. So I actually did an update about this before. But basically, they're two different branches where they have, like, obviously they're both Muslims, but they have a very fundamental difference in their religion about, like, who the rightful successor is. And that one difference in their view on the whole Muslim religion has led them to, like, really just be very opposed to each other. There have been attacks against each other, like bombings, like attacks on, like, certain religious centers. So they are very opposed to each other.
Yeah, and so, like Celine was saying, like, the Muhammad, like, they both believe in Muhammad, which is, like, they think of it's like a messenger of God, but they disagree on who Muhammad's successor should be, whether it's someone in his bloodline or, like,
another person who wasn't part of his bloodline, but who was, like...
who was, like, a high up thing. So, like, this kind of, like, it kind of separated the two sects of the religion, which is, like, another word for sections. But, so, like, that kind of caused a huge conflict. And now, like, the majority of the world is a Sunni Muslim.
Yeah, I think it's, like, a very small portion of Muslims are Shiite Muslims, but Sunni make up the vast majority of it.
Exactly. And so, like, the Sunni people have actually, like, been sort of... like, since they're so big, there are people that have sort of taken that religion and turned it into a reason to hate the Shiites. Yeah. And so the Islamic State, which is ISIS, a big terrorist group we've talked about so many times. But essentially, they are a Sunni Muslim group, and they kind of have been responsible for, like, taking, like, a lot of bombings on Shiite mosques, which are temples for, like...
Yeah, they're, like, religious centers. Like.
Yeah, and so a bomb actually tore through the Shiite mosque in Peshawar, which is in northwest Pakistan, on Friday, killing at least 57 people and wounding more than 100 in one of the worst terrorist attacks in Pakistan in several years. Wow. So this is, like, it's like a sad day. Like, I feel like most people think when they think of terrorism attacks, they think of, like, 9/11, like, things that happen in the U.S., but terrorism happens all over the world.
It happens so frequently, too. Yeah. Like, there are attacks all the time that, like...
Yeah. And so, like, what this does is, like, it essentially, like, causes these people to live in constant fear, and especially when these terrorist groups are like gaining power, like ISIS is super powerful in the Middle East. Like they consider the Shiites heretics and they bomb them. They like
just because of their religious views, just because they're different,
and even they're like a part of the same like main religion, but just because they're two different branches, they hate.
It's like Christianity obviously has like different branches, right? So it's kind of like that, but within the Muslim religion, and they're like opposing each other because of like some difference in their religion.
Yeah, and it's really awful, but police officers, like, essentially what happened was that there was like a gunman on a motorcycle, so he killed 2 police guards, entered the mosque, and then detonated a suicide vest, which is like a bomb, and then exploded himself and everyone else.
Oh my, so a suicide bomber.
Yeah, and it's awful. Genuinely, I think like you can have different opinions, but you still have to respect people.
There's no words to describe like bombing a like religious center where people are there, you know, like just because of their religion. I mean, that's awful. So
I mean, if you take anything from this, it doesn't matter what political party it doesn't matter what religion you're in, but as long as the other person is a good person and like even if you don't agree with them, it's important to have mutual respect.
Yeah, that absolutely. Violence is not the answer.
Yeah, so. Especially if it's just like opinions.
Especially with disagreements like this.
Yeah. Like everyone has opinions, but you have to learn to respect the other person even if you disagree with them.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Okay, so our next update is kind of big too. It's not another bombing, don't worry. But it's about a bill that passed in Florida that its nickname is the Don't Say Gay bill because that's kind of like what it is. Like, that's kind of... So the real name of the bill is the Parental Rights and Education Bill. And basically this bill is saying that any conversations regarding sexual orientation, which if you don't know what that is, that's like how you identify yourself in terms of like being straight, being gay, being bisexual. Like you can't talk about any of that. It's banned in kindergarten through 3rd grade. And on top of this, like, there's like this thing like for older grades too, like you can't talk about it if it makes them uncomfortable, something like that. But basically it's like banned, and parents have the right to like sue the school and the teachers if they talk about it. So like say a teacher just talked about like being gay or something along the lines of that, the parents could literally sue them.
And like it's really tricky because I feel like there's a bunch of loopholes. Like let's say you have like a LGBTQ teacher, if they are like talking about their family and like or something like that, I think like it is possible you could turn that into a lawsuit.
You could do like there are plenty of ways where like literally a teacher could get sued for talking about that, which is like insane. And the whole thing about this is like, oh, but it gives parents the rights to like make these decisions about like talking about it on their own time when they want to talk about it. But it's like, it's just a part of life, you know? It's like we should be able to talk about things in schools, which this bill is basically like restricting entire conversations about stuff like that, which is important. Like
it's kind of like similar to the 1776 commission, which is like I mean, it's actually
Can you tell us what that is?
So the 1776 commission, it's like over now, but during, I think it was like a couple years ago, it was a bill that like essentially like prevented the discussion. It kind of goes with the critical race theory, but it like prevented the discussion of talking about like American history in a bad light. So essentially preventing discussions of like slavery to an extreme level. Like,
and there's
it essentially like prevented like talking about like our dark history, but our dark history is our history.
It's our history.
And if we don't recognize like our like shortcomings, then how will we build ourselves up for the future?
Absolutely. So it's like, just like they're trying to ban like critical race theory in like classrooms, they're also trying to ban talks about like sexual orientation and all this stuff that's like part of life that we should learn about. We shouldn't just hide people from it. And they're saying it's like terrible because they're influencing, but yeah, obviously there are so many people who are like very against this, saying it's like restrictive. And like for example, like a local LGBTQ advocacy group said, quote, "Let us be clear, should its vague language be interpreted in any way that causes harm to a single child, teacher, or family, we will lead legal action against the state of Florida to challenge this bigoted legislation." So obviously, as you can see, there's so much opposition, which I understand, you know, and it's called the Don't Say Gay bill because that's kind of essentially what it like kind of is, you know, because it's not being able to talk about like sexual orientation. So, and then on the other side, people are like, oh, this is good because parents can make their own decisions, and like, but it's like, yeah, and the Biden administration even condemned the bill and said it was like anti-LGBTQ. So like when the Biden administration like literally condemns this, then it's like
because like that's our presidential organization, but it is like a subject of opinion. But I think like the bottom line is I feel like me and Celine are both straight, so, like, we obviously don't understand the struggles of the LGBTQ community and how this affects them. But from, like, an outsider standpoint, like, imagine if we just stopped talking about, like, slavery as a whole, or if we stopped talking about, like, race as a whole. It's kind of similar to that, and I feel like people will just become uneducated, and not necessarily that they'll be influenced by these conversations, but they'll become educated, which I think is important.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, like, a part of life, you know?
Yeah.
Just, like, so... and on top of this, the bill prohibits teaching, quote, in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students, like, past 3rd grade, which, like, you can interpret this to extend to all grade levels, basically. So it's, like, it's very restrictive. That's the whole thing about it. It's very...
I just feel like... I'm just worried that it would be taken out of context and someone will, like, sue someone for something that doesn't even... makes sense.
And the fact that you can sue, too. That just seems extremely extreme.
Yeah.
Or wait, that was extremely extreme.
But that brings our first half to a close.
Yes, so second half we have some more updates. So
and they're pretty interesting, too.
So stay tuned. Thank you. Welcome back. All right, so let's dive into the next update, which is about a Capitol rioter being found guilty. So as you know, okay, why don't you give us an overview? Why don't you give us an overview of the Capitol riot?
Okay, so we actually made an entire episode about this, so go check that out.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's honestly one of the reasons we started the podcast.
Yeah.
But what happened was, after the 2020 election, people were mad about the result. And, I mean, like, I guess you can be mad, but they kind of took it to the extent where they decided to raid the Capitol in protest of the election.
And the reason why is because they thought there was, like, voting fraud and, like, the election
but they had no,
stolen.
like, evidence of it, essentially. But they raided the Capitol. They didn't just protest. No. They raided the Capitol violently.
Some of them had guns.
Stormed the Capitol with guns. People were killed. Like, 7 people got killed. Or not 7, like 5, maybe.
I don't know.
I think 5 people got killed.
And they broke in. Some of them, like, broke into the Capitol.
They sent death threats to senators. They raided the Capitol. So much damage was done. They pepper sprayed and, like, hit the Capitol officers with bats. They broke windows at the Capitol. They used, like, the fart spray in, like, people's eyes.
Spray?
Yeah, they used, like, fart spray in people's eyes.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. They wrote on Nancy Pelosi's desk, which is, like, the Speaker of the House. They essentially kind of
vandalized,
our democracy. And it broke the country apart. It was a
terrible event.
Because people were so divided over this. They thought it was our breaking point, essentially. Because, like, the fact that people were so mad about something that they would threaten our democracy is honestly just so sad. And, like, the example they set for children...
Right. So it would... Yeah, to just summarize everything she said, it was an awful event that really just involved... Yeah. Anyways, so...
And, like... They're literally, like, teaching people, like, this is the way to solve conflict.
Yeah, no, it's not. It was essentially using violence to get their way, and, like, some of the people that got killed were actually people that were, like, rioting there. Like, because that's how, like, chaotic it was. Because it was, like, everyone was, like, jumbled around. It was absolutely insane and terrible and probably, like, incredibly stressful for, like, the police officers there.
Who were just doing their job.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a terrible event.
It was just a division of our country. And the influence it has is just sad.
Yeah.
Listen to our update about
All right.
Our episode.
Yeah. Yes, please. Okay, so one of the people involved was Guy Resley Riffett, and he was from Texas, and he was found guilty on 5 criminal charges involving the attack. So, basically, he allegedly traveled to the Capitol with the Texas 3 Percenters, which is, like, a very far-right militia group that he was involved in, and he purchased an AR-15 rifle, which is, like, very dangerous, and a pistol, and he brought them with him to the Capitol, and he apparently told officers, quote, "You can't stop us all, let us in, don't be a traitor." So yeah, definitely he had a gun, and, like, apparently, like, during the trial his lawyer tried to, like, deny that he had a gun, and it was like, yeah, right, we all know he had a gun. He had, like, an AR-15 rifle and a pistol, which and basically the officers were able to spray him with pepper spray, which was good, but he didn't actually enter the Capitol. But he was, like, kind of like a ringleader, essentially. He was, like, encouraging people to go in, and he was kind of seen as, like, and basically, after the insurrection, he was bragging all over the place, like all over social media. He was saying he was leading the charge and like all this great stuff. He was like so proud. And his son, which he was 18 years old at the time that his dad like went and rioted at the Capitol. He had very different political views from his dad, and basically the guy who like rioted in the Capitol, he would like say a lot of stuff about the insurrection that his son like totally didn't agree with. So his son would like record what he was saying, right? And his son's name is Jackson Reffitt, by the way, and he testified against him at the trial that his father actually like threatened him and his sister. He said, quote, "If you turn me in, you're a traitor, and traitors get caught." So it was like basically like threatening him, and that was just really bad. Like, imagine if your father was like rioting at a Capitol and then threatening you about not turning him in. So obviously that was bad. But then the son ended up turning in all the recordings he had of his father to the FBI, which is good because that was like big evidence in the trial.
That's a hard thing for a son to do.
But it's hard, but it was the right thing to do. But it was also extremely hard for him. It was a very emotional trial. Like, the guy who was like getting convicted actually started crying when his son like testified against him, because it's like, it's
I think
your
that
son.
just goes to show like it doesn't matter what side you're on, but there's a
There's a
line,
clear right and wrong.
There's a line, and like not all Republicans are bad or whatever like people say. Like, that doesn't define the entire group, but like if you go to the Capitol and do that, that's violent and that's a hate crime. And that's a terrorist attack. Yeah. And that's not okay.
It's not okay. But yeah, so there was a lot of evidence from like Zoom meetings, text, social media, and yeah, he was convicted of 5 charges, which just goes to show. And the sad thing is, like, his wife afterwards was like, instead of being like remorseful, like, my husband shouldn't have done that, she was like, to all the Capitol rioters out there, like, basically she's like, don't like appeal, which is, wait, hold on, sorry. Yeah, so she's basically saying like, you didn't do anything wrong, that type of stuff. And she said her husband would appeal the ruling, which is basically where you like send it to an appellate court, which is like to review the case over again to make sure the decision was right or not. So it's basically like, yeah. But anyways, I think it's just sending a message out there to anyone involved. Like, it's not okay what you're doing. And then there are so many people involved, and as more and more people get convicted, it's really just sending a message out to our country that this is not acceptable, this is not okay, we're not going to be okay with this.
Yeah, so. We're not okay with, like, if you have an issue, then do it say it respectfully. Literally, respect is so important, and we lose all of our dignity and respect for each other by doing things like that. So.
Absolutely. So next time, if you're caught up in the moment and you have a disagreement and you have a different opinion, talk it out. Use words. Don't use violence. And be respectful. Understand that you may not even fully realize where they're coming from, and that's okay. Take the time to listen to them, and even you don't have to agree with them. They don't have to convince you, but just being respectful and being able to listen to their opinion, even if it differs from yours, is so important.
We're not defined by our political party, and at the end of the day, we're just humans, and we need to respect that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so moving on to our second update of the second half. 2 squared.
Okay.
So this is I actually didn't know much about this, but the Major League Basketball has been on like a lockout over labor disputes. And essentially like what happens is like in order for like I think there's like a limit on this contract called the Collective Bargaining Agreement, which is like a CBA. And it's an agreement between the Major League Baseball Players Association, like the people playing, and the Major League Baseball, like, which is like the corporation. And so it basically is like the rules about like the employment and financial structure of the game. So it's like an agreement made between the workers and the corporate people. And so their old agreement expired. So they were supposed to come up with a new agreement, but they weren't able to like negotiate with each other in time. So they had been on a 99-day lockout, which is essentially where like owners halt all baseball activities, and they can literally like lock out the players from their facilities. And so during this time, like the only business taking place is like figuring out the contract and like negotiations. And so like they basically like the concern of the players and the corporate businesses clashed with each other, which is why they weren't able to make up an agreement. And so essentially like what the players were mad about is that the pay, for one, like they said that the shrinking percentage of revenue made is going to players. They're being underpaid. And they also want like to have guarantees that they won't be taken advantage of and they won't get less money, and they're kind of just mad at the corporation. And so because of this, the lockout happened. But eventually, recently, the Major League Basketball teams and the players union have come to an agreement on the bargaining agreement, which is so good because a lot of people are happy about this, and they have set to have their opening day of the season on April 7th, which I mean, it was supposed to be on, like, March something, but since of the lockout, it got delayed, which I'm happy, and everyone is happy about. It was, like, the biggest breaking news in pop culture and sports culture, so, yeah, it's an exciting thing, and I'm glad they came to a compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so our last update is kind of sad again.
Wait, you have 2 more.
No.
Wait, did you only do 4?
Oh, no, I do have 2 more.
Yeah.
You're right. I forgot about that.
All right.
Okay, sorry, not our last update. Definitely not our last update. Okay, you know what? Okay, let's do this one. This one is going to be a quicker one. So, a man who's denied entry into an art museum stabs 2 employees. Yeah. I saw that headline and I'm like, I need to do an update about that. Okay, so basically the stabbing, this dude was like, this happened at 4 in the afternoon at the Museum of Modern Art, which is in New York. So this man was like rejected from the museum because his membership wasn't active anymore. So he just jumped over the reception desk and stabbed 2 employees. Like, full out, like... You're rejecting me?
No, I shouldn't be laughing.
Yeah, it wasn't, like, yeah.
It's just
so ludicrous. Like, it is so ludicrous. Like, to literally just be rejected membership and then to lunge across a desk and stab 2 people.
Did he just have, like, a knife on him?
Apparently so, yeah.
What is wrong?
And they were 2 women, and, the good thing is they were taken to hospitals, like, after they were stabbed, and they were stabilized, and they're expected to survive, which is good. But still, like, imagine how traumatic it would be if some dude literally just came and stabbed you.
Like, you're just doing your job. I hate the people that get mad for people doing their job.
Oh my god, it's like they're just doing their job. Leave them alone, please.
Literally. Like, it's not their fault. They didn't do anything.
Right, it's kind of like at the riot at the Capitol. Like, the police officers are doing their job, okay?
Yeah, like don't be
calm
mad at them.
Yeah, my god. And everyone, there was like footage at the museum, and everyone was like so confused. They were like, what is happening? Like, these 2 people were like running out, and it was like really chaotic because like obviously 2 people had been stabbed, and no one really knew what was going on. And yeah, this dude was talking about it, and he's basically like, yeah, I had no clue what was happening. There were like people running ahead. Like, people could tell something was wrong, but it was kind of like chaotic and confusing.
That's so scary. I'm pretty sure that guy, he probably had like some
mental issue. Yeah.
So hopefully he gets the help he needs to not do that again.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he was like denied membership into the museum because of like 2 other incidents that had happened before. So it was like, he clearly has had a pattern of like disturbing behaviors.
I
so
hope he gets help.
Yeah, he definitely needs help and like mental help, but also he does need to be punished. Like, that doesn't make up for what he did to the fact that and obviously I'm glad the 2 women survived, but still, I mean, it must have been terrible for them and everyone involved, just how scary that would be. And that stuff should never happen, you know? Like, again, as we talked about, if you have a disagreement, if something doesn't go your way, never just resort to violence, which is really important. All right,
so second to last update.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk a little bit. This is kind of like not like all of a sudden news, but I feel like it's important to talk about. So like there was actually a study released by the CNN. It wasn't released by CNN, but it was shared exclusively with CNN ahead of their publishing. But it was a report by the Zero Mercury Working Group that essentially found record levels of mercury in skin lightening products.
Yeah, and mercury has been traced to like a lot of different. You can talk about that, but yeah,
it's extremely toxic, and it is like people used to think that tomatoes are poisonous because they would eat tomatoes on like mercury platters and they would die. So mercury is very deadly, toxic.
I remember, like, this is so random, but we were like in social studies in like 7th grade. We learned about some like one emperor who thought like drinking mercury would like make him immortal, but then he died because he was drinking mercury.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's unrelated, but
mercury, it's just so bad, but it essentially is like, since it like essentially like kills, it like attaches to your proteins, and there's like this whole thing I could get into, but I'm not going to. But did you know that proteins have like poles though? Like, they're slightly charged.
That what?
Proteins are like the proteins that make up cells in your body are charged. Like, they have a charge. And, like, that has to do with, like, a bunch of metal poisoning. But I'm not going to get into that. But it's really interesting. Actually, there's a podcast that I listen to that, like, talks about this. But, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay.
Sorry. My medicine interest is just kicking in right now. Anyway.
I can tell.
So, mercury has been used in cosmetics for a very, very long time because, like, it sort of, like, disrupts the production of melanin, which is essentially what makes your skin have color, and why white people don't have color because they don't have melanin, and why colored people have colors because they produce melanin. So essentially what this does is it, like, prevents the production of melanin in your skin, which in turn makes you have lighter skin. And a lot of people, like, okay, it's so much more common than you would think. So there was actually an $8 billion worldwide sales as of, like, now, and it's predicted to reach $12 billion by 2026, and women account for 80% of these skin whitening product buying this. I don't know.
Buyers?
Yeah, but there's actually been, like, laws on mercury, but 47% of these products bought contain more than the permitted level of mercury.
That's kind of concerning.
And so, you know, you might be wondering, why would someone want to lighten their skin? And you might think, like, oh, like, that's not, I've never heard of that before, because, like, typically we see people want to tan, you know, like, in America, that's the culture here.
Yeah.
But in Asian countries, specifically, like, India, China, Korea, and, like, I heard a lot about Korea and, like, all those, like, Asian countries, people are obsessed with lighter skin.
Yeah.
It is terrifying. I've actually, like, kind of experienced it firsthand. Like, people, like, from, like, my parents are from India. I was born in America, so, like, I guess I'm not as exposed to it, but, like, from what when I went to India once to, like, visit, like, I visited, like, several countries in, like, a summer, and one of those was India, and literally people would, like, come up to me and be like, oh my god, you're so much lighter than everyone else, you're so pretty, you're pretty because you're lighter, like your skin, like, you're so gory, which means, like, fair, like, you're so fair and white, and, like, it's just so messed up. People are obsessed with the color of your skin, and they will do anything to make it lighter. And it is such a stigma surrounding it that it makes me sick. We'll do, like, an episode actually about this because it's so important.
For sure.
But the promotion that, like, you see actresses and actors, like, famous actresses and actors promoting these skin products to, like, the poor population to lighten their skin because they think it will beautify them. And this obsession, like, there's literally, like, clinics. I saw this documentary about, like, clinics made in, like, Korea that literally, like, use, like, radiation to, like, destroy melanin production and to lighten your skin. People have surgery.
That's just such an unfair, terrible beauty standard. Like,
yes,
it's not even a beauty standard. It has nothing to do with, like, beauty. Like, the color of your skin is great no matter what. Like, you shouldn't feel the need to do anything to it, you know?
Yeah, and I feel so bad because these little girls grow up thinking that if they have darker skin, they won't get married. That's literally the extent
or
of
you're
how
not
much
beautiful.
How much skin color is prioritized in society in Asia. I feel like we normally talk about, like, racism in the US, but it's, like, different over there because people are racist, like, if you're darker, like, ew, you're ugly, like, that type of stuff. But it's also, like, people are obsessed with lightening their skin tone. It's not just, like, people are being, like, held against, like, they're being, like, you know, mistreated, but they also are so obsessed with being a lighter skin tone. They think that if they're lighter, they'll get married easier, that people will, think they're prettier.
That's such a, like, unfair, that, like, imagine for, like, kids, like, growing up, like, thinking that they're ugly, or, like, oh my gosh, that's bad.
It's so awful, and we'll talk more about that in an episode, but I think that stigma is just something we need to address.
Absolutely, for sure. Alright, our last update is kind of sad. It's another missile strike. So missiles hit a Kurdish capital in Iraq. So can you tell us what the Kurds are, Ahana?
Yes, so we talk a lot about the Kurds, actually. I think we talked about it in, like, Turkey episode we made.
Yes, our Turkey native episode.
Yeah, check that out. But essentially the Kurdish group is, like, a cultural group, and it essentially is kind of, like, autonomous in a sense because they want to be their own country, but what the Middle East did was, like, they put, like, so there's, like, this group, right? They're kind of in the mountains. But what they did was they split the country so that, like, each country would take a little bit of the group so that they don't have enough power individually in one country to create their own country, because they're all like separated widely into like different countries. But essentially they're like a group. They have very distinct cultural values. They are very distinct group. They help a lot with like terrorism. They're actually like an ally with the US against like ISIS and stuff. And they're just like a very distinct like cultural group.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So 12 missiles were fired at the U.S. consulate in Erbil, which is a Kurdish city in Iraq. So a U.S. consulate is basically like kind of a place where you can provide passports, birth registration, like stuff like that for like people living in another country. Like, but it's kind of like it's different than an embassy, but it's kind of like the same concept of like your country having an area in another country, kind of like that. But basically, there were missiles launched against it, and Iran's Revolutionary Guards actually claimed responsibility for the missiles. They just like full out like claimed responsibility for it, which like I feel like sometimes that doesn't happen as much. Like I feel like sometimes it's like they like deny it or something, but this one was just like
fluffy.
And the attack was said to be like attacking like a strategic center in the capital basically. But luckily the bright side is that there was only material damage and no one actually died, which is good. Like one person was wounded, but no one has died, which is good. According to the Kurdish Interior Ministry, the missiles caused like obviously like damage to like things like buildings, stuff like that, and to the consulate building from the US, injured one civilian, but besides that, no one was hurt, which is good. And a U.S. official blamed Iran for the attack, but they didn't give any further details on it. And I keep saying Iran, but it's Iran. Iranian officials haven't commented yet. So basically, yeah, it's obviously not a great thing, but so there hasn't been an attack like on a U.S. consulate by like Iran in a long time. Like the last one, the last like ballistic missile attack directed at U.S. forces was after like you probably know about the whole Soleimani thing, but if you don't, he was like a military leader that basically the US killed, and there was obviously some backlash to that. So that was like the last time we were attacked with ballistic missiles. So it's happening again, and people are saying it has to do with like an Israeli airstrike in Syria on Monday. But yeah, we're still trying to figure out like kind of all the stuff about it, but luckily no one has died, which is the bright side to it, but obviously it's still not a good event. Like it shouldn't have happened. I find that kind of like
weird because everyone knows that the US has like the strongest military in the world, so if they wanted to do something they could for sure. Yeah. And so I don't understand why you would attack. Well, I mean, I guess like if they're anyway, they have their own issues.
It wasn't just the U.S. consulate they attacked like other areas near it too, like in the Kurdish capital too. So
of course like these countries in the Middle East are very against Kurds too. So.
Yeah,
because like they don't want them to become their own autonomous region.
They were also mad about like an Israeli airstrike too. So there were some things building up. So
do you have any good news for us?
Talk about debate. Oh, debate. Yes. So we
get to go to state.
Oh yeah, so we're going next Thursday, I think.
Yeah, I'm just excited because we get to like go to a hot tub at the hotel.
It's gonna be so fun. So I'm really excited about that. That's our good news, and hopefully.
Oh wait, I have a good news.
What?
I get to wear a dress to school because I'm on the tennis team, and so we get.
That's like your dream.
Literally, it takes up so much time, but it's honestly kind of fun. And tennis is so much fun. The tennis season is great, and we get to wear dresses for away games. And I like feel like dressing up, like because I haven't been able to dress up in a really long time. So
all right, good for
I'm
you.
in the mood,
yes,
but
so happy.
Yay!
Okay, so thank you for listening.
Stay tuned. Check out our social medias, all in the bio. Follow us there. Follow our podcast. Email us for any questions, and check out our website at weare_youth.org.
Yes, so thank you. All right, bye.